Welcome to your virtual classroom for Learning Unit 5. In this video, we focus on Learning Outcome 1 and 2. For this learning unit, you will need to read your module reader, chapters 8, 9 and 10, the white paper 6 and your SIAS policy. The topic for this video focuses on Learning Outcome 1 and 2. And offers an overview of the SIAS policy and the teacher's role in implementing this policy. A reminder of the goals for education for all. According to the White Paper 6 on Inclusive Education in South Africa, ordinary public schools will admit all learners in the area, regardless of their difficulties, and take all possible measures to offer reasonable accommodation to learners with additional support needs and disabilities. Let's recap the policy documents that we have covered so far that support inclusive education in South Africa. At its very foundation, inclusive education is a human rights issue. It is stipulated in our Constitution that every child has a right to basic education and to reach their full learning potential, with the South African Schools Act of 1996 making further provision for this. In 2001, we saw the adoption of the White Paper 6 on special needs education, building an inclusive education and training systems, setting the country's goals for the realization of inclusive education over the next 30 years. As student teachers, it's also important to draw your attention to the minimum requirements for teacher education qualifications, or the MRTEQ. These are essentially the guidelines for initial teacher education programs and require that all initial teacher education ensure quality educators, and I quote, that have an understanding of the complex and differentiated nature of South African society, learn to work in nuanced ways in confronting the diverse challenges in schools and the communities they serve, and deal with diversity and promote inclusivity and responsiveness to environmental sustainability. In 2014, we saw the finalized SIAS document, which is integral to the realization of education for all in our ordinary public schools, and ensuring the necessary support structures are put in place and assist teachers, school counselors, and school-based support teams in formalizing support through individual support programs. The video today focuses on this screening, identification, assessment, and support policy. In short, we call it the SIAS or SIAS policy. So what is this policy all about? It's a policy framework for the standardization of the procedures that we need to follow to identify, assess, and provide support to learners who require additional support in our classrooms, ensuring that they have equal participation in inclusive school settings. It provides the principles and guidelines for support provision in our schools. And the aim of the policy is to ensure the effective inclusion and full participation of all learners within the education system. So how does the screening, identification, assessment, and support policy aim to achieve this? It aims to assess the level and extent of support required in schools and in classrooms to optimize learner participation. It aims to identify individual learner needs in relation to the home and school context to establish the level and extent of additional support that is needed. And it aims to provide access to and the provision of support at an individual level. In Chapter 8 of your textbook, you will see a visual representation of the SIAS process. It is important that you study the diagram and ensure that you are comfortable, because you as a teacher play a vital role in this process. Here is a summary of the process. Every learner is screened at the beginning of the year in order to achieve early identification of any problems. If any barrier to learning or learner need is identified, the teacher has a responsibility to fill out what is called the SNA1 form in the SIAS policy. Part 1 and 2 are completed with the learner's caregiver or parent. Part 3 of the SNA1 form is where the teacher devises an intervention and support plan and records this on the SNA form. Where further intervention is needed, the teacher will consult with the school-based support team for review and a plan of action, and the school-based support team may request the support of the district-based support team. To do so, the school-based support team alongside the teacher will need to complete the SNA2 form. This is so that the case can be referred to the district-based support team if necessary. The district-based support team then has the responsibility to complete an SNA3 form in the SIAS policy to highlight their support and intervention plan. So you as a teacher assume the role of a case manager who will drive this support process. As the class teacher, you assume responsibility for each learner who's in need of specialized support in your class. You will be guided by the SIAS forms and process. Let's take a closer look. With the learner profile, the teacher ensures that every learner is screened for early identification of potential barriers to learning. When barriers to learning or learning needs are identified, the teacher, along with the caregiver or parent, completes the NSA1 Part 1 and 2. Here, the teacher starts by consultation with the parent or caregiver, and together they identify the areas of concern and the areas of strengths and assets that the learner may have. The SNA1 Part 1 and 2 looks like this and can be found in the SIAS policy. The teacher then completes the SNA1 Part 3. Here they devise their intervention and support plan based on curriculum intervention, assessment interventions, adaptations to the physical classroom environment, support needed from the school-based support team, and include a log of consultations with the parent and caregiver. Part 3 of the SNA1 form looks like this example. The teacher then has a responsibility to review their support plans at least once a term. They constantly monitor and assess their learners' progress, both formally and informally, and record any concerns about individual learners in an observation book. When requesting further support from the district-based support team, the school-based support team, in consultation with the teacher, complete the SNA2 form. The SNA2 is an assessment and intervention by the school-based support team and needs to be completed to be submitted to the district-based support team so that further support from the district can be provided. The district-based support team then review the SNA2 and, using the SNA3 form, formulate their own support and intervention plan for the students. In summary, the SIAS policy provides the framework for the standardization of the procedures to identify, assess, and provide support to learners with barriers to learning. You, as a teacher, play an integral role in this process, and parents and caregivers should always be brought in to this process.